Hello and welcome to your fourth week roundup from the Dialog Rugby A Division League, and what a weekend it has been. An outstanding few games that we had for you, and this league every week is just getting better and better and better. We had a couple of upsets in the first week, but now we've had the major upset here in the fourth week. We'll talk about that in just a moment. Our first match that we had was Air Force hosting Army, and Army, despite resting a few players, managed to come through to an easy win. Army rested their big man Pio Tuai, who was having an injury in the first game. He struggled with the heat a little bit as well, so they thought they'd give him a little bit of a rest against a foreignerless Air Force. And Air Force, sitting at the bottom of the table, weren't really expected to give Army too much of a tough time, but they'll be happy that they actually managed to score 2 tries against Army. And Air Force had been getting a smashing from most of the teams they came up against, but they would have been really happy to actually get in and score a couple of tries among their Forces colleagues. But Army scoring a good win, 33 points to 10. That's how that one finished. Rohit Rajapaksa once again in the fly half berth. He was paired with a couple of scrum halves in the early half, but didn't make too much of a difference. They managed to score 33 points to 10. Ramuwai once again scoring there and proving his worth. Then we had another match also on Friday. CRNFC taking on the Hambantota Sharks. The Hambantota Sharks usually play their games in Beliata. They had to travel up to Longton Place to take on CRNFC, who were sitting pretty at the end of 3 weeks. They were in the number 2 position. They've dropped one, but they haven't dropped the quality of their rugby too much. They took on the Sharks and beat them pretty easily by 46 points to 7. That's how it 46 points to 10. In fact, that's how that game finished at Longton Place. But at halftime, it was 17 points to 7. And despite the fact that Robert Malnick actually scored a very good try to start off proceedings for CRNFC, it wasn't really the sort of performance that they would have liked in the first half, especially because they had rested quite a few players. Ashan Di Costa had moved to the second centre position. Nalin Kumara came in at fly half. So Mushtaq in the backs coach and Imti Marika trying a few combinations there, but the forwards were a little bit better. Their line-out looks like it's improved. The scrum looks like it has improved as well. So they're going to have to do a lot of work before they get to the police game, which is going to be a much tougher game than the Hambantota Sharks were. But 46 points to 10, they ran in nearly 30 points in the second half, and they'll be happy with that. But also they have to look at the fact that Puppy Farrell came in early in that second half, and he was the guy that really gave them a lot of the go forward. He was excellent against Navy, and when Manlik and Puppy Farrell are together on the pitch, that's when CRNFC play their best rugby. This time it was Farrell turning out with Ropiha in the inside centre position, and that's why CRNFC were able to score quite a few tries. But Malnik alone with Joe Faumui is not going to be the answer to CR's problems. They have 3 good foreigners, 2 high quality ones, 1 good one and 1 not so good one. So they might need to really look at trying to bolster their foreign reserves when they go into the big games and also into the second round, which will mean that they need to have a much better bench and a much larger depth to their squad. But still, for all Coach Imti Marika will be a little upset that they couldn't create more. They did score quite a few tries. In fact, they ended up scoring 7 tries, but not a lot of those came from set plays. Not a lot of those came from some nice fluid ball movement. True, the conditions didn't help them, but a lot of it came from scrappy turnover ball, which CR managed to actually score off and put together a couple of passes. So that's something that will concern Imti Marika. They haven't really created much, except with the exception, of course, of Robert Malnick, who is creating a lot all around the park. Then we had the blockbuster game, Navy taking on Kandy in Valisara, and Kandy hadn't really flattered. We're used to Kandy being one of those really top teams that decimate the opposition. They came in and scored a half century of points in the first match against Air Force, but since then they struggled against Army, and they also struggled to beat Havelocks up in Nithavala. And it's not usually that Kandy struggle at Nithavala, but given those performances, a lot of them were expecting them to go down pretty tamely against Navy, who had remained unbeaten up to that point. But a superb defensive effort, and Fazil Marija is known for his attacking play, but an outstanding defensive effort where he led the line and kept the shape of the Kandy defensive pattern really well, and they didn't allow any tries for this star-studded Navy team. Oscar Ouma, also playing in the centre position, really put the shackles on Setefano Takao. When you need someone who's physically big to be able to match up to Takao, and he was given one job by Johan Taylor, and he did that job very well. But the guy who did all the work around the park on the day was Christopher Clutie. He had an outstanding day on the park, and given the soggy conditions he was able to last as well, but he was just unbelievable all over the place, a completely dominant performance. He scored an outstanding try when he plucked the ball out of Chamara Dabare's hands off a superb Roshan Weeraratne box kick and scored the first try of the game to really put the cat among the pigeons. Navy responded well, but because of the superb defense they were just unable to do anything against his Kandy side, and the game finished 16 points to 6. Riza Mubarak once again scoring all the points for the Navy team. But despite the fact that Thakau was on the field, the Navy was shown that if Thakau is marked, they really need to go to other players, and not just Joeli Luthumailangi. They need to use some of their dangerous players, guys like Vishwamitra Jasingh, Dinusha Chaturanga, Srinath Surya Bandara, to take up the slack if Thakau is marked, and they're too reliant on him at the moment, I feel, and that's something that Coach Leonard De Silva has to address, because he needs to make sure that there have to be a few patterns, that they have to run a few ploys off their phase plays, and at the moment they're just turning up and expecting to win matches, and despite the quality that they have in their side, that's not going to happen, especially when a team plays as well as they did. Kandy played very well as a team, and Clutie led the attack beautifully. He scored his second try of the game as well. So 16 points to 6 is how that one finished, and it's a real commendable performance to actually beat Navy at Valisara, where they haven't been beaten in a long time. Then we had another game that was expected to be entertaining, but unfortunately it was entertaining only for the Havelocks fans. It was 34 points to 5 against CHNFC at Havelock Park, and Coach Glenn Christini very happy with the fact that Havelocks are able to play a little bit better than they did in the opening couple of weeks of this Dialog Rugby League, because they weren't really up to scratch. They lost their game against CR, which they would have liked to be more competitive in, but against CHNFC they really were very good. They brought in a new foreign centre as well, who did a lot of damage against the young CHNFC lads, and CHNFC looked very reliant on Rimzi Jamaldeen having a good day, and Rimzi is a very talented player but also can sometimes be very temperamental, and when he has a bad day that means the entire team suffers. So there's something that CHNFC have to look at, maybe as a standby rather, for the fly half. So that's something that they really need to look at, maybe get somebody else doing the kicking as well, because some days he's brilliant, some days he's not so brilliant, and that's where things can go wrong for CHNFC. But for Havelocks, guys like Rehan Thiagaraja, Dulaj Pereira playing really well. Hiranta Pereira also coming onto the park and proving to make a difference as well. So good to see the young players coming through after they lost quite a few of their senior forwards to Navy at the start of the season. So CHNFC will be happy, Havelocks will be happy with that performance. Also a good pairing between Kavindu De Costa and Dulaj Pereira appearing, and maybe that's one for the future for Sri Lanka as well. So if you look at the standings after week 4, we have Kandy SC who leapfrogged Navy to the top position. They have 17 points after the 4 games that they have played. Navy also on 17 points in second place. CRNFC keeping their third place spot. Army in fourth. Havelocks in fifth. CHNFC in sixth. And Police, Hambantota Sharks and Air Force bringing up the last 3 spots. So massive upset with Kandy beating Navy. Used to Kandy actually being beaten, that being the upset. But now when Kandy beats Navy, that's the upset. So it's interesting how times have changed. But the unbeaten champs of last year have been beaten early on in this Dialog Rugby League for 2014. It's blown the league completely wide open. CRNFC have the ability to win it. Havelocks have the ability to win it if they're playing the sort of rugby that they played on Sunday. Navy can win this, and Kandy certainly can win this as well. So it's going to be a really exciting Dialog Rugby League. So keep it locked to thepapare.com for all the updates and the coverage of all the games.